Here I am, just talking to you for the 14th time as I'm loading up another episode to put in the can as I heal up. My name is Phil, and you're listening to The Lip. Okay, everyone, it's The Lip. Phil is talking to you right now. Strange to talk about myself in that way, but it just seemed appropriate for what I was saying at the moment. As I sit before you right now, that you're listening to this episode, you need to know that it is September 21st, 2024. I know the last several episodes I've been spitting out a lot of different dates, but I needed to give you context to let you know that yes, I am putting these episodes in storage for you to hear as I'm healing up from my bicep tear surgery. And I want to make sure you have context to know that if something changes throughout the time period of you listening to the episode, you got to know that I recorded this almost a month in advance at this point. However, I can assure you that I'll go back to probably doing maybe two a week, probably in the beginning of November, somewhere in that neighborhood. So there'll be a little bit more current and more topical things that I might speak about on that subject. That's what this episode is all about. Me just talking. And I got a few things that I like to talk about, and that's what I like these episodes for. Gives me sort of a platform to make a bit of a hodgepodge, if you will, so that I don't necessarily have to have a specific topic, because these things that I'm talking about, well, I could go into them in great detail, or I could just touch on them a little bit. And because there's just so many things that I want to touch on, it doesn't necessarily warrant me focusing entirely on the thing, if it makes any sense. Sort of give you a little taste of what I'm thinking about. That's what Just Talking is all about. If you haven't ever heard one of these episodes, I kind of give you a quick take on what I'm thinking. And I have a few that I'm real interested in giving you takes on. But first, I gotta let you know that the painting that you see right now, the one of one, out of my, I guess you could call it an art studio, is called Rage and Calm. And as I tell you about all these other paintings that I've been showing you, eventually they'll be for sale. But not quite yet. Still working out a few details on that. Now, to give you a basis of what I'm feeling that this episode is going to be about today, I'm going to tell you that I had a whole bunch of different topics. In fact, I had an entirely two shows that I was going to make out of this. And one of those shows was going to actually be an observation show. But when I really thought about it, I kept pushing the observation show further and further back. And I realized that, well, I probably have a better chance to actually just talk about some of those things that I observe versus putting a whole show together. I didn't have as many things that I wanted to talk about in that regard, but I certainly could talk about those things. So, and I wasn't totally sure that I had enough that I wanted to just talk about. So, the things that I wanted to talk about combined with the stuff that I observe, probably gonna make one entire show, which is what I'm gonna do right now. But before we get into any of that, it's time to fill in the blank. And now, here's the question. What is the most difficult thing about making this show. I pretty much filled in that blank already. The hardest part is when I have a subject that almost bleeds into a second subject. Further explanation again. If I have a subject that I have planned and then another subject could simply find its way into that same subject, and I don't quite have enough material for either, it becomes more difficult because I kind of wanted to have both of those two things separate, but in truth, I really need to combine them. And that becomes difficult for me. Sort of a long explanation, but that is certainly the way it is. Once again, the question is, what is the most difficult part about doing the show? And again, the blank is filled in by me saying that when I have two subjects which are so close together that I could literally combine them, but I rather have them separate. But of course, on this episode, I'm going to actually combine them. So the observation, that's going to disappear. I'm just going to talk about that stuff because some of it really is better to just talk about anyway. On that note, it's time to ring the bell and begin just talking. All right. Where to begin? I think I'm going to start with something light and then move on to something a little heavier and then go back to something light again. That's always fun to do. I don't know if you've noticed some of the observation, but if you've been to a movie in the last couple of years, they've been selling popcorn in the best way I could describe gimmick containers. Now, I think it's a pretty interesting idea. You have these cool little things and you can put popcorn in them and go and take them home with you, and you feel good about yourself until you're actually in the theater and you're eating the popcorn, because a lot of times people like to get those big buckets of popcorn and just chow down on it. When you get the gimmicks, you're not getting that much popcorn. Now, the only problem with that, on top of the fact that you're not getting as much popcorn, is how much the gimmick costs. Whew, boy. A lot of times you can go to the theater and they have these gimmicks and you're scratching your head like, wow, it's already paying almost $15 for a large popcorn as it is. But now they have this specialty novelty gimmick that you can put popcorn in. Now that thing usually costs about $20, $25, which is even more than a large popcorn container. And again, you're probably only getting about enough popcorn for a small. So you're getting way less product, but you bought the gimmick, and that's what you wanted, right? You didn't care about the popcorn until you're still watching your movie and it's only been 20 minutes and there's no more popcorn left. And then you're stuck holding this gimmick that costs almost $30 in your hand, and you're like, uh-oh. And pretty typically, most movie theaters allow you to go and refill the extra large buckets, the big ones that a lot of times, well, what you could do is throw the popcorn in a bag and go get another large popcorn, fill that up, so you take home one. But anyway, you're left with a lot less popcorn and you got this expensive gimmick. What you can do with it is you bring it home and you can put popcorn in it, I guess. Well, maybe. If you figure out an effective way to clean it out, which is coming from experience. Now, I actually purchased a gimmick. and it was one of those really cool gimmicks. Um, I got the one from that movie. Oh my goodness, why can't I think of the name of the movie? It's on the tip of my tongue. That's the problem with just talking. I have the name of the movie in my head, but I can describe the gimmick and the movie. It's the movie with the girl who is going through all kinds of emotions, and they're sitting in a control center, and each emotion can take the board depending on what's going on. The gimmick that I got from that movie was a popcorn container that's shaped like the head of the angry guy. Now, the angry guy is red and he has flames coming off his head when he gets really, really upset. And so the popcorn gimmick has the red head and the flames on top. And there's a button that you can push. And when you push that button, the flame lights up. It's actually a really fun little gimmick. However, you really don't get the most amount of popcorn inside of that little gimmick. And it cost about $25 originally to purchase. Whew. Somewhat of a steep price. But that's not the only gimmick that was out there. That's just the one that I happened to buy. Turns out that I've seen in the movie theaters other gimmicks that were kind of crazy. Deadpool and Wolverine, they had a Wolverine head that they filled with popcorn. For the Ghostbusters movie that most recently came out, personally, I think that's probably the coolest gimmick because it was actually a ghost trap that had popcorn on the inside. That's pretty cool. Of course, there was that new Borderland movie, which is a game, and Kevin Hart's in it. Sorry, I have never even cracked a smile at a single thing Kevin Hart has ever said. I don't find him funny, but that's just me. But they actually had a gimmick for that. Obviously, Star Wars, they had a R2D2 popcorn container. And that's just a few. There's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse had one. And these things are like $20. They don't hold a whole lot of popcorn. However, doing my due diligence, knowing that I was going to talk about these, I looked around and I was trying to see what you could see these things for because as a collector, I recognize that there are people out there who probably value these things quite a bit. It turns out that upon doing a little bit of research, that Wolverine head from the Wolverine Deadpool movie, you could find that and all of these other ones on eBay that I looked for. And it turns out that on eBay, the Wolverine head is being resold for $92. That's a nice little profit off of that. The Ghostbuster Trap, saw one of them, $75. Just recently, the Borderland movie came out not that long ago, and that gimmick is being sold for $70. And now here comes a couple of the ones that really make my eyes pop out. Popcorn container. For Spider-Man in one of those Spider-Verse movies, it was being sold for $150. And my personal favorite, the R2D2 popcorn container, $300 on eBay. That's just outrageous. Not really. I'm a Star Wars geek. So, on the down low, if I had the money off the top of my head, well, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't necessarily might consider purchasing such an object. It's very possible that that could be something that I might want to do. Well, now I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite and least favorite things in the world, and that is the self-checkout. I have observed that one store in particular, Target, that was near me, actually closed their self-checkout area because they were having a lot of people steal stuff. Now, personally, I think the self-checkout is a positive and a negative. Now, hear me out. I've mentioned multiple times throughout this show that I was a manager at Wawa and I had register skills, and I wasn't the slowest, I wasn't the fastest, but I was pretty good. And as a result of that, seeing some of the cashiers in other stores that I would go to, sometimes they would tend to be a little bit on the slow side. Other times, the customers would be slow putting things up there, which would hold up the cashier no matter how fast they were. And I found it to be beneficial to be able to go and scan my own stuff because I'd be fast as the cashier that they would have, or faster, and blow through that and get out of the store. However, really thinking about it, that person who's at the cash register, who is running it, the cashier, is being paid X amount of dollars. While I'm scanning my own stuff, I'm not being paid X amount of dollars, but I'm paying for the stuff that I buy, essentially giving not just Target, but whatever store I go into that has a self-checkout, a free cashier. Yeah. So they're getting over on all of us because we're doing a job that they would pay somebody to do for free. And as a direct result of that, I take a little offense to it. Just a little bit. Because the fact that we're actually doing a job, again, that they would pay somebody to do, just a little part of me wants to say, why don't you pay me too? Because I'm doing you a favor. Because you don't have to pay somebody to bring my stuff up. Now, of course, they would never do this, but I would think that for people who are as efficient as I am at the self-checkout and can get in and out quickly, there should almost be some sort of a discount for the person who's doing it. Maybe 5-10% discount off of all your purchases. But I'll be fair to the merchant. How am I going to do that? It's about the speed. Like I said, if you're fast enough to get your purchases out in a timely manner so that you're not clogging up the self-checkout line, making it impossible for people to go through, you should be rewarded and essentially paid for your services, being compensated for the work that you've just put in. I strongly propose this just right now, as I'm just talking. What if the self-checkout line at any of these stores that have them, even Wawa has them now, what if there was a timer on the self-checkout? Now hear me out. If you met a certain standard for the amount of time that it takes you to scan your items and then pay, you would get a sliding scale discount because you did the work and didn't have to have somebody else do it for you, and you were able to make the line move at a certain pace because you were able to get your products out faster. Do say I don't know what the timer would be, but you put some sort of timer on there, and depending on how fast you got your stuff rung up, you would get a certain discount on the items that you bought. Just a thought. Just a thought. Because think about it. There have been plenty of people who've seen those self-checkout lines, and a person who has never, ever, ever, ever once worked in a place where they were a cashier, and they took forever at the self-checkout line, making it inconvenient to use. So why not reward the people who actually know what they're doing and want to get out of the store as quickly as possible by giving them, like I said, a good 5-10% discount depending upon how quickly they move. That way it's not, okay, just because you're doing it, you're getting something for nothing. Everybody benefits. The customer gets a benefit for being able to do their own stuff and get it out quickly, and get paid for doing a job that the store doesn't have to pay somebody an hourly wage in order to perform. Everybody wins. Just a thought. Just a thought. Now, I think of trucks because I love trucks. Enjoy them. And then even more so, I love General Motors products and Chevy products. Heck, on my office door on the inside, I actually have a Chevy emblem that came off of a Chevy truck. It's on my door. Turns out that General Motors is trying to give that Cybertruck a little run for its money. Just a little while ago, I've discovered that GMC has launched a Hummer. Yeah, remember those big old monster gas guzzlers? However, this Hummer isn't the same sort of SUV Hummer that you've seen. It's actually a pickup truck. And more interestingly than not, it's not a monstrous gas guzzler, it's an electric vehicle. There are some parts of me that feel dirty thinking about an electric Hummer. The idea of something as big and powerful as the Humvee or Hummer and being electric just sort of seems like almost an oxymoron. But in order to get the things done that you want to get done with this particular truck, it almost has to be an electric vehicle in order for the technology to work right, I believe. So I'm not all the way turned off on it. Turns out that this electric Hummer can do some pretty interesting things. It's got an extraction mode, which is a button that you can push, which will allow the vehicle to raise up about 6 inches so that you can get out of some tricky spots if you're off-road. It's got a ultra view camera, which is something kind of interesting. It's a camera that actually is underneath the vehicle. And the other carriage, kind of interesting. Although it does have an infinity roof, which is something that, as somebody who had a vehicle with T-tops at one time, I'm not all bells and whistles. I'm not crazy about having the see-through roof. Not really. It's not really my thing. But here's the tricky thing. The one that makes me feel a little uncomfortable still. And I don't know at 46 if I'll ever really embrace this. But considering the trend of what General Motors has been doing and what the technology is beginning to allow us to do, it seems like it may be the wave of the future, and that is the hands-free driving. That just, I'm still not quite comfortable with hands-free. Now, granted, I might be a little more comfortable with hands-free if it was, say, a smart car. Something real small. If it bumps into something, it's just gonna simply flip over and just sort of do that little thing where those little wind up toys do. That might make me feel okay, but a Hummer, a monster like that, and you're not actively physically holding on to the steering wheel, controlling the direction of which you're going, that just unnerves me a little bit. Just a little bit. To a point where I'm like, yeah, if I ever got my hands on a GMC truck that had that option, I would be hard pressed to ever use it. I don't know if I would be able to. I just don't. And it's not really out of fear. It's just the simple fact that I just like the idea of being able to maintain control of a vehicle of that size. I just think it's something cool about being able to say, I am driving my truck, not my truck is taking me somewhere. That just seems weird to me. I would rather be driving it than it taking me someplace. It's just me. And on that truck note, still, as somebody who loves General Motors and Chevy and pretty much most of the vehicles that they have ever come up with in their lines, except for the police cars. I'm just gonna throw that out there. That's where they messed up with that. But I'm not gonna go into that any further. Um, there is a vehicle that they had years ago that I actually owned one of, and they came out with it in two different um, of their brands. They had it in the Cadillac brand and they had it in the Chevy brand, and that is the Avalanche, or what would be an Escalade in the Cadillac brand, or what I called it was an Escalanche because, well, it's called an Escalade, but it still looks like and was an Avalanche. So realistically, it was an Escalanche. That's just my thing about it. Beautiful, beautiful machine. I owned one. A 2500 version was available that I didn't know about until I actually looked up my 1500, which was really funny because 1500 was the standard and most people had that. And it had a nice big V8 engine. It was a 5.3. It's a great engine. Loved it. But the 2500 was something that I only found out about when, like I said, I was in a shop and I was working and I was looking for parts for my 1500 and I noticed the option for 2500 and it made me smile a little bit. Oh, that's cool. Let me see what this is about. Knowing that my 1500 had that beautiful 5.3 V8 in it, I was like, wonder what this has got in it. And then I almost had a heart attack and passed out when I found out that the 2500 Avalanche was packing an 8.1 liter V8. 8.1 liter V8. That thing is just, to give you context, a lot of times you'll see a 6.0 in a Corvette. But this Avalanche had an 8.1. The power that this monster possessed was uncharted, in my opinion. I'm thinking just the power to weight ratio of an 8.1 inside of an Avalanche. That 5.3 made that thing move pretty well and pull and push whatever I needed to do. At 8.1, I could pretty much go to the shipyard here in Philadelphia, pick out any of those vehicles out there, those old Navy vessels, hook it up to that truck and just about pull it with that 2500 Avalanche. Insane how powerful that vehicle was. But to really make the point of where I'm getting at, the Avalanche line was cut off and they stopped making it. This is what always gets me. Anybody who really pays attention to Chevy and General Motors knows that the General Motors company makes their cars out of the Cadillacs and the Chevy lines. Of course, when they had Pontiac, they had cars there. They had Oldsmobiles, they had cars there. But when it came to trucks, almost exclusively, General Motors, GMC, was trucks. So my thought process was, why didn't they make an Avalanche for GMC? It just seems like a natural fit. And I wouldn't be opposed to it. Especially since I forgot to tell you how much, the best part about the electric Hummer. As I was talking about it, I went and did a little bit of research, and I noticed that the average price for this electric Hummer, going back for just a second, is about $105,000 for the electric Hummer. I think that General Motors, if they were to come up with a new Avalanche, heck, I could see them putting it out there for $50,000. I'd bite. I absolutely would bite if they dangle that out in front of me. I think that would be a decent price for what it could do. But I think that $105,000 for an electric Hummer, that also sounds right too because of the technology. I mean, it's all about the tech, and for what that thing can do, truly the price fits too. Got a couple more things. And the next thing I'm going to talk about, I have to prerequisite my comments by saying I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I am an independent by politics. I like some of what the Democrats do. I like some of what the Republicans do. But mostly, I don't like all of what either of them do. In fact, I don't even like 50% of what either of them do. And on that note, I have some things I want to talk to you about as far as a little politics. First of all, I'm going to do an entire show that's going to come out November 2nd, which is going to feature not Republican, not Democrat, but my independent thought process of what whoever the next president should do. But of course, my best estimation is whoever wins, they're not going to do the things that I would have them do, or should do for us anyway. But what I'm going to go to at this point in time is say, as I'm recording this, it's September 21st. So it's been about a month and a half, 2 months, that Donald Trump has had 2 assassination attempts. Wow. 2? That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Secret Service didn't do the best job the first time. He actually got shot in the ear. But the second time, they caught the guy before he could do very much. I don't even think he got a shot off, that guy. It's amazing to think that the political climate is to the point where that some people think that it's a good idea to eliminate somebody who is running for office. That's not right, no matter who it is. It just really isn't. It's really not. I think that's just absolutely absurd on the highest level. But at the same time, I look at his opponent, Kamala Harris, when it came down to the debate, excuse me, she looked very presidential. I'm not going to argue that point. she looked presidential. She was able to essentially throw some chum in the water for former President Trump, and he took the bait. And he started getting a little off his game. And she maintained her focus. However, again, from an independent standpoint, there were questions that I would like her to have answered. And I walked away from that debate feeling as if I knew nothing about her policies, because it felt to me like she said nothing about her policies. She didn't answer for the administration that she was a part of, and she didn't say how she would make it better moving forward. She just simply looked presidential. But as far as a plan went, I got nothing. So, in the long run, I think that when the election comes, we're literally in deep trouble because we've got nothing. I'll even be honest with you and tell you who I'm going to vote for right here, right now. And you're going to laugh and you're going to think, oh, you just wasted your vote. But it is my vote, and I'm going to tell you that I'm going to write in ballot Darth Sidious, the Emperor from Star Wars. The reason being, think about it. I already just said that I didn't feel that Kamala Harris actually answered any questions as far as what she was going to do. And she didn't answer any questions about what she's already done as vice president. I think that Donald Trump was just a little eccentric and had less control over what was going on in the debate. I think that he had more control against an opponent that he clearly would have been able to defeat in Joe Biden. And I think he knew he could definitely defeat Joe Biden. Because let's face it, I'm sorry, Joe is definitely not fit for office. I'm sorry, I can't put it any other way. So Darth Sidious is my candidate. Because, making matters more interestingly, I just watched Star Wars Episode 3 again when he took over the Galactic Empire. And the thing about it is, at the very core of what I would like to see the president do, he has a structured plan in order to accomplish his goals. Think about it. He set it up from the beginning. He had the war between separatists and the Republic, and he was working on both sides. Didn't matter who won, but he still had the plan that once it got to a certain point, he was going to eliminate all the Jedi, which was going to stop the war, and he was going to streamline his power so that he could make sure that the Empire was going to be organized in a fashion so that he could actually get his agenda accomplished. And he was able to do so. I honestly believe that he is the best candidate that I think we have right now for President of the United States. Because, let's face it, he does have a plan. And yes, much like Donald Trump, he had an assassination attempt. And it was thwarted. He stopped it. So, in truth, I'm going to go to the voting booth in November, and I'm going to actually write Darth Sidious on the ticket for president. 100% I'm going to. And it's because, like I said, I think that he would be the only choice that makes sense for me. Because, like I said, he has a plan. He has a way to execute that plan, and he is willing to make sure that his constituents understand what his plan is. Clear as crystal. That's just kind of the way I'm going to go with it. Finally, I'm going to talk to you about some strange foods. I know I did a video not too long ago where I was eating cup of noodles that were s'mores flavored, and that probably took years off of my life. Turns out the other day I saw a reel where somebody was drinking Oreo flavored Coke, and I said, wow, this has just got to be the most disgusting thing in the world. And then, make matters worse, this Oreo flavored Coke happened to have been sugar free. So not only is it a strange flavor, but it doesn't even have any sugar in it. What? So I went to the store and I picked up a bottle of it, and in the process I saw that there was another weird food. But this weird food is essentially hand in hand with the Oreo flavored Coke, the drink. This happens to be Coke flavored Oreo cookies. Coke flavored Oreo cookies, Oreo flavored Coke to drink. For a second, I was confused. And I think that maybe the companies were confused. Don't you realize that you're supposed to drink soda and eat cookies? But somehow, someway, they got twisted around. And now they want you to eat soda and drink cookies. How does it even work? How do you eat soda and drink cookies? All my life, I was doing it wrong if they've come with this. I've always ate Oreo cookies, and I drink Coke. And I love Coke, and I like Oreos. Not so much that I would eat them every day, but I do like Oreos. But I could have sworn that I was supposed to eat the cookies and drink the soda. But apparently, they've decided amongst themselves that maybe the people should try it the other way and drink the cookie and eat the soda. I can promise you, I did in fact drink the cookie. I drank the Oreo flavored Coke. And to my surprise, it tasted a lot like liquid cookies. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it did. I'm still afraid of eating a Coke flavored Oreo, and I have not done so yet. But when I do, I will probably drink another Oreo flavored Coke and compare the two, and probably do a video letting you know what they were like. But still, it just seems unnerving in some ways, almost incorrect to have. I'm just trying to get my mind back around it. They want me to eat Coke but drink an Oreo. I don't know. I'm not sure how that happened. Finally, I have another food that is strange. We are definitely living in the end times. Because now I bought a box of Velveeta shells and cheese. And I've been eating that for the last year or so just because, I don't know, just something has sparked in me to just go ahead and do that. And I like the bacon flavored one. Nothing wrong with bacon and mac and cheese. In fact, that's a great combination. But I've seen at, say, a CC's restaurant where they had mac and cheese on pizza. But now Velveeta is making pizza flavored mac and cheese. I bought a box and I'm going to tempt fate and find out exactly if it's any good or not. I don't know. I'm, again, scared thinking about this strange anomaly of food. Just these three items alone: the Coke flavored Oreos, the Oreo flavored Coke, and now this Velveeta shells and cheese pizza flavor. These three items are enough to leave me in the corner, covering myself with a blanket in the fetal position, uncertain of tomorrow. But on that note, I think I've talked enough. And I'm going to ring the bell on this episode. Whew. That Just Talking episode seemed to have been intense, especially towards the end, when I started talking about the food stuff. Just that food stuff made me go a little bit weird. In fact, as weird as it may be, I may actually go and eat that pizza mac and cheese today as I'm recording. I don't know. I have to really, really think about it. But as for right now, I can tell you it's time for the Spear of the Week. I'm going to go through the Spear of the Week before I go to my picks. Because, well, it's so early and I'm talking about week 5. So I have to use the crystal ball, got to dust that sucker off, and then make my picks for week 5. So I'm going to go to the Spear of the Week. And the Spear of the Week is whatever dark handshake deal that Coca-Cola and Oreo made in order to collaborate to create this unholy alliance. Those two gentlemen or women and gentlemen need to be speared directly through a table or a wall, because as Jim Ross would talk about The Undertaker and Kane, they have created an unholy alliance to have come up with these two products that, of all things, should probably never have been mixed in any way. I can't begin to describe to you how weird it was to taste cookies while I was drinking a Coke, and I can't imagine tasting Coke while eating an Oreo. I'm lost thinking about it. So, without question, the Spear of the Week is whoever the executives were who came up with that plan to create those things. Coke flavored Oreo, Oreo flavored Coke. Now it's time for my football picks for week 5. My goodness. Week 5 picks. I'm so far ahead of where I should be because, like I said, I'm doing this in advance of me sort of resting to get myself ready for physical therapy. And week 5, I have one of my favorite teams that I'm talking about this year because I honestly think they're the worst team in the NFL and maybe even one of the worst franchises in professional sports in the last couple of years. That is the Carolina Panthers as they play the Bears. My prediction is since um, Bryce Young, the quarterback of the Panthers, was benched in what would have been, as you hear this, several weeks ago, barring an injury, is not going to be in the game again. And I believe that the Bears are going to dismantle the Panthers with their rookie quarterback. I think that it's going to end up being 21-7 Panthers over, or rather Bears over the Panthers. I don't see myself picking the Panthers over anybody this year. I'm picking them every week because I'm just fascinated to see if I can get them to go 0-17. Next game could be a close one, but I think it could be a good one too. As a defensive-minded person when it comes to football, I think that this is going to be that kind of game. The Washington Commanders are going to host the Cleveland Browns. Not going to be a whole lot of offense, and it's not going to be the offense's fault, because both of these teams have pretty solid defenses. And I think that the Commanders are going to beat the Browns something like 17-13. Buffalo Bills versus the Texans, two playoff teams, two Super Bowl contenders in the AFC. I really like the Bills again. As long as there's no injuries, I don't see why the Bills can't be 5-0 by this point. Having beaten both the Ravens in week 4 and the Texans here in week 5, I think it's going to be another solid performance. Not going to be over the top, but I think that the Bills should win 28-20, give or take. Ravens and Bengals, two division mates. That ugly division, man. Run the ball, throw the ball, play hard defense, smash each other really hard. That's what they do. That the AFC North, they just kill each other. And I think that's what's going to happen again. However, the Bengals are going to be hosting, but it's not going to be enough. I think that the Ravens are going to put the Bengals away 23-20 in a close game. And here's the 49ers. Gotta pick them every week. Not that I expect them to go 17-0, but I think that this should be one that they could win. They're at home and they're playing the Cardinals. That just sort of smells like a win. Or it could smell like a trap. As long as they do everything right, they can control the clock by running the ball like they do so well. I see it 21-13 49ers over the Cardinals. Those are my picks for week 5. Okay, time to wrap up this episode, which was another one down in the can so that you guys can have fresh episodes every week while I'm healing. My 178th episode. Yay me. And more importantly, yay you, all you lip people who've been listening to us all this time. I've got plenty of things to still talk about in future episodes, so hang in there. There's going to be more to come. Fresh one every week. I'm telling you, I honestly think that's where I hang my hat. I can honestly think that if there's a point in time where I decide not to put out a fresh episode, that'll probably be the time that I would have had my last episode. That's just the way that I feel that I want this show to progress. I don't want to have any old stuff coming out in a new week. I don't like the idea of having a remix. I know people busy and they do stuff and they have to get something like that happening, but I want to make sure you get fresh content every time. That's just what I want to do. Having said that, I want you to join the LIP Facebook group. Join us. There's always room for one more member. You can find me on Instagram at Philip Henderson 5102. I am out there on X somewhere. And it is now time for the words of wisdom. And trust me, these are words that will help you, or most likely help you deal with someone else, more like it. Everybody has had those people who come up with a lot of just tremendously terrible ideas. And it seems like each idea they come up with was worse than the last one. What you need to tell that person is, very simply, your mind is like a prison, and all the inmates have escaped. Your mind is like a prison, and all the inmates have escaped. Just letting them bad ideas come out one after another. Just a sad truth. Some people just let that happen. And speaking of equally sad, it's time for me to go. And just know that when this episode comes out, you will have heard the last one that I have stored up. And I'll probably be in a better place and ready to do more episodes after this, more currently. So, on that note, my name is Phil, and you've just listened to The Lip.